Hi, beautiful being. Oneness evolving here from God of Me. Outside on my front lawn because spring is here. Let me show you. It's all happening. This is the spring explosion and that's me waving at you. It's just, this is what happens. Let's get up close. I am going to show you what I've been writing for God of Me today. Honest, I promise. But who's going to miss this? It's beautiful. And this is the first faithful cineraria that's been flowering all winter. You can see it's been flowering all winter. But now it's doing the spring thing. And look at the insides of these flowers and how some of them have little tufts of pollen on them, like that one. And the older ones don't. I just think it's beautiful. And so we have thousands of Spiraxis flowers, and a lot of them are stripy, but see, there's some that aren't. And you have, those used to be purple, those mauvey ones over there that are all stripy, but they've all turned stripy. And over here, more of the flowers are actually red, or not as stripy. Whoops, I'm in the sunshine. So anyway, there's beautiful variation, and this other beautiful purple cineraria that's been going for ages. And there's, the bright yellow calendula. I'll show you those later, but I want, look, wow, right? And see, there are daisies on the lawn, and I love the fact that there are daisies in the lawn. And now the cineraria are just all coming out everywhere. And I look forward to this because it's just so bright and beautiful. It's all happening. And this thing, which was a cutting that I planted a few years ago, is now turning into the shrub that it always will be. And everything is just coming up cineraria. I can't say coming up roses. The roses aren't flowering yet. But look, the bluebells are. This is just the time of year when everything explodes into colour. And it's fabulous, and I love to share it with you. We've got some columbine here, granny's bonnet, aquilegia, depends what you want to call it. This is just the plain pink one, but it's so pretty. And down here, there's this little pink and white one, which is very cute, and here we go, I've got some focus. This is a single one. In the back garden, I've got one that's pink and white, but it's double, so they hybridize. And the magnolia, of course, is just looking beautiful, and it's got blue cineraria underneath, and everything is coming up flowers. So this is the time of year when this garden is fabulous, and I'm happy to share it with you. Look at that big fern, it's just thriving. And this one too. So it's all very green and blue and purple and verdant. And I'm going to zoom in and enjoy this beautiful flower. Ah, what a day. And I might not be quite as beautiful as the flower, but let's go inside and I'll tell you what I've been doing with God of Me this morning. The 0 Point Field, and I've been writing again, of course. I don't write on my own. It's a team effort. Shut the door and put the keys back. Take my hat off. Stops me from being blinded by the light of the sun. And inside into the quietness where I can tell you what we've been doing. So, hello beautiful being. It's lovely to see you on my live. It's always a joy to be joined. And today, finally, I've been writing about the gut brain, the gut compass, because the human has 3 brains, one here, and one in your gut. And life works best when all 3 of them are talking to each other in a kind of coherent and sensible way. And, excuse me, it's getting organised here. But most humans really aren't very aware of the fact that they got 3 brains. They just think they've got one, like I did. And really, I was very lost in my life for a long time. And I didn't know how to navigate life. I didn't even realise when my gut was screaming at me saying, no, don't do that. It's just not a good idea. And I used to walk straight into things that weren't good for me. And the thing about the gut And I wrote myself some notes, but I'm gonna start in the middle because I'm sure this is the piece that people want to know. What do you mean the sixth sense has a name? Well, I really didn't expect to make this connection because I've been talking about the gut, the brain gut, the gut brain, and how we can use it to navigate in our lives. Follow your gut feelings, but how does that work? And so for the last few weeks, I've been talking about the enteric nervous system, and I've been sort of unpacking very simply, top level view of the communication that goes on between the gut and the brain, and it's pretty cool. Talk about that more another time. But what I really wanted to get to was this thing that I noticed in one of the articles that I read when I was just looking for really basic, simple information about the gut-brain connection and all of that stuff. And there was this word, interoception. And I thought, what is that? If you've never heard that word before, you're like me. Although I know that humans, we think we have 5 senses. No, actually we have another 20. I think it's either another 21 or there's 21 including 5. And by that I mean sensory neurons that can get information. And there's all kinds of information and I haven't digested it so I can't tell you. But trust me, we have more than 5 senses. And the sixth sense that, that thing where you, how did I know that? I was reading about interoception and my little mind was kind of blowing because I thought, oh my God, this is what I do. And this is how I do it. And I have this finely tuned sense of interoception and it guides me like a sixth sense. And this is the gut brain. And I'm sort of realizing as I read more about it that actually it's not just the enteric nervous system. Interoception is actually coordinated by the brain in your head, but it gets information from the gut brain, and we feel a lot in our gut. And interoception is actually, the reason we have it is because the brain needs to know everything that's going on inside our bodies all of the time so it can run our bodies, right? No surprise. But what that means is that we have these sensations coming from inside, not outside, inside. And so without interoception, you don't know if you're hungry, you don't know if you're cold, you don't know if you need to go to the toilet and empty your bladder or your bowels. You don't know if you're happy or sad without interoception. You don't know what you like or don't like. You can't make a decision. I mean, it's much, much harder if you don't have a sense of it, because all of that stuff actually happens emotionally. And I mean, you don't want to be impulsive because, you want to keep your brain on. But what I realized was, oh my God, this is where the information comes from, because in my everyday life, both eyes closed in meditation and eyes open walking through my life, I can tune into and access information and know stuff. And it's not stuff that I go and look up on the internet and I don't ask my friends, I just know. And it's not some little wild thing that comes into my mind and I don't follow every impulse. But all this time, I never really realized that this is a big chunk of how it happens. This interoception sense that every single human has is just full of information. And you might say, well, but hang on a minute, that's just information that it's telling my brain what's going on in my body. Yeah, sure. But here's, and most, the sort of the scientific research model and all of that, of course, is about that. And it's fascinating. And I could go down a rabbit hole and I'm not going to, because one, I don't know enough. And two, that doesn't actually help me guide my life. I could become an interoception specialist. No. What I understand and what I've been learning from studying Dr. Joe Dispenza and studying Nassim Haramein and the work of the International Space Federation, who, unifying physics, and you think, what the hell's that got to do with my sixth sense? Everything. because what is now, and it was published at the end of 2023, and no one's found a problem in the math. And nobody can really say this isn't true, because there's been this personality split, and I've been reading this in Nassim's post just over the last couple of days, so I'm using the words. There's a personality split in quantum physics, because you have the physics that's very large and they're very small, and they couldn't make them match. And what Nassim and his team have done is they put it all together. And why that matters for your sixth sense is that it means that in your fingertip, one proton inside your fingertip, the mathematics shows that it contains all of the information in the entire universe. Hi, Eves! Which means that if you know how to connect with that information, it's all there inside you. And you don't have to go anywhere to get it. And so I've been playing with this for quite some time now, because I understand this. And it's mind-blowing if you understand that this proton's connected with all of the other protons in the whole universe. And so you're not separate from anything that you want to know. But how do you interact with that information? And I do, but how am I doing it? And this sense of interoception is a big piece. Because I realize that when I am sitting in my meditation, or standing, isn't just sitting, standing, lying, I can do it anyway, and I ask a question, or I've asked a question earlier, and I know, because I know how it feels when my brain and my body are kind of in a coherent state, and I can receive information without interference from all the stuff that's going on in my life. And of course I've got a blindfold on, and I've got music in my ears, and it's a guided meditation. So I'm not paying attention to anything that's outside of me. The information that comes to me through interoception. I feel it in my body. And it's not like, sometimes I've had a voice speak really loudly inside my mind. Hi, Gus! I've seen pictures, but most of the time, vast majority of the time, I feel sensation in my body, and it's subtle, and it moves and it changes, and I don't recognize it. And what I've learned is to stay with that and just keep using that interoception sense. And you know what? I've learned to translate that stuff into information that is useful to me. And it's a skill. And anybody can learn how to do it. And this is how I use my gut compass. So the 0 point field and I are writing about that. That, in fact, the gut compass is just one piece of what the human has to help them navigate in life. You've got a great compass in your brain, but we haven't talked about that yet. You've got an amazing compass in your heart. And nothing really works unless you get the heart compass coherent. If your heart is incoherent, all the information that's available to you is going to be like static on the wire. It'll make no sense. When someone's got their Bluetooth earbuds on and the signal is scrambled and it sounds like the Cylons, it's all metallic and broken and garbled, and it's like, well, that's what happens. Your sixth sense is screwed. If your heart is incoherent, you don't get good information. So you have to know about the heart compass first, and we've done that. We've talked about that. And if you want to know what the 0 point field and I wrote about that, go check the link underneath this post or underneath this video and find God of Me on Patreon. Click the link. You can follow for free, and you can access everything that we have written and that I then read, because I'll be reading what we wrote today in a day or so, and then it'll go up on Patreon. You can listen to the way that the 0 point field and I explain it, which is a lot better than me burbling about it. But when I burble about it now, I share all these other bits and pieces, and there's all the stuff I was going to tell you, which I haven't talked about at all. So this sense actually is how our sixth sense works. It's a big chunk of it. You got to get the information, and people don't get the information because when you have your eyes open and you're running around in your busy life seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting and having all this sensation going on in your skin and everything else, who pays attention to what's going on inside them? Can you feel your heartbeat? Some people can, some people can't. Not everybody has the same degree of interoception sense, by the way. Some people, it's really quite hard for them to know what's going on inside their body. Me, I think I've got it on steroids. And it's a two-edged sword because it does mean that sensory information can overload me. But, you know, it also means that I can access this information, and because I've learned how to translate the information that I receive in my body into something I can use, I'm not lost in my life anymore, and I tell you, that's really nice. So it's a skill. And you need interoception, by the way, to answer the question, how do I feel? Because emotions, like I feel angry. Well, if you're feeling angry in your body, you probably feel some heat and some tension. Or maybe it's cold anger and you're just, you know. Or if you're happy, you have a feeling in your body. If you're sad, you have a feeling in your body. You can't have an emotion and know what it is without interoception. And so I think this is a big chunk of our sixth sense. I don't think it's all of it, but I think it's a big chunk. And if we can learn to use it, well, wow, we can navigate our lives. And I find that exciting. Now, the other piece that I wrote about, that we wrote about today, was something I wanted to put in because it's actually a very important part of this, because we've been talking about the gut and the enteric nervous system, and that is the microbiome. You think, what do you mean, the bugs in our gut? Well, you know, it turns out that the microbiome, there's less of it than, you know, they used to say it was a couple of pounds or a couple of kilos or whatever, but these recent studies have shown it's only about, what do they say, 0.2 kilos or 7 ounces. But it's still really powerful because the microbiome helps us break down our food and we get nutrients, we get energy, and all of that is cool, and it does that while it's eating, and so it should, you know, it's a symbiotic relationship. But it also makes a ton of chemistry which directly influences how we feel. So you don't just get an upset gut because you're upset. You can have an upset gut that makes you feel bad. It works in both directions. And people think, oh, why do I feel so awful? There's nothing wrong in my life. Well, do you have an imbalance in your gut? That could have something to do with it. It's not uncommon. And then, so yeah, there's the direct impact on your emotional state and in your gut. And I'd forgotten about this, that you've got the most immune tissue in your gut. So there's this immune response, and these are all things, this is all information that goes to your brain. You have this communication between your enteric nervous system and your brain that's telling your brain constantly what's going on inside your gut as you're digesting or not digesting. Because, you know, there's this really complicated system and different bits of it doing different stuff at the same time. And so your enteric nervous system is managing that. And then there's the chemistry, which is, you know, digesting your food and all of that. But also it goes up to your brain. Like you got most of the serotonin in your body is in your gut. And you think there isn't a connection with depression or feeling good or bad? There is. It's becoming clearer as people understand more. And then all the immune tissue in there, 70% of the immune tissue in your body is in your gut. So your immunity, there's a lot of mediation of your immune system from your gut. And that tissue in your gut sends out cells into your bloodstream, and that gets to your brain as well. So there's this big communication going backwards and forwards between your brain and your gut, and it's the biggest conversation in your body. Your brain's talking with everything and everybody, but this one is the biggest conversation. Hence, it's kind of important to know a little bit about it. And the microbiome has quite an influence on that because it's making you feel different things. And by the way, if you think you control your appetite, no, you don't. Your microbiome does. Because your microbiome, if it's used to eating whatever it's used to eating, it is going to make damn sure that you keep eating that stuff. Because if you eat different foods, then the different microbes are going to grow because different microbes eat different foods. And there are thousands of them. Every person's microbiome is different. They're like fingerprints. No two are the same. So it's a really interesting field of study, and I don't want to go there. I just wanted to make people aware that this is part of the picture of what's going on in your gut and all the things that influence your gut brain and the communications called the gut-brain axis. It's really important, and it's going on all the time. And a big part of it is this interoception. And it just happens to be a big chunk of your sixth sense. And I think that's really cool, because if you know that it's there, well, you can start paying attention to it. Doesn't mean you have to follow every feeling you have in your gut, but at least notice what's going on in there. I have a dear friend who recently was facing a decision about whether to go and live somewhere, and she was feeling quite stressed about it. Dropped me a note, and I said, well, hang on, cut yourself some slack. Just give yourself a bit of time to slow down and feel into this. Maybe there's a reason why this feels really wrong. And she went back and visited the place again, and she knew it was wrong. So she was right all along. But, you know, we have these ideas in our minds about, oh, but this makes sense and it's the right thing and I should do this. And we follow it, and it all turns to crap, because this part of us knew something that this part of us didn't. And I think it's really important to actually listen to that voice, but you got to know it's there. Because when, you know, your eyes and your ears and your nose and your mouth and your skin are all saying, but there's all these reasons, you know, the logical mind takes over and says, my senses are telling me X, Y, Z. Your gut is telling you ABC. You want to pay attention to the whole alphabet. So that's what we were writing about today, the 0 point field and I. And I was a little bit gobsmacked when I thought, yay, I've got to interoception. I can finally talk about it. And I read a couple of just really simple articles. One of them, obviously for teenagers, it was perfect. And I thought, wow, this is how I do it. Oh my God, that means anybody can do it. It's just a skill. Wow. So, if you want to hear me and the 0 point field reading what we wrote today, check us out on Patreon, follow for free, and it'll be up in a couple of days. Until then, thanks so much for watching. It's lovely to see you, and big love. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.